Hi, this lesson is lesson 77, and it's about the 100 Years' War. So, what do you think? 100 years for a war to go on? It's an awfully long time, don't you think? And this war happened in the Middle Ages, and it was between families. Royalty. They were arguing amongst each other, and because some of the kids were cousins, and they were kings, the kings of France and the kings of England, and they didn't get along. Do you know some families don't really get along? Well, these families had problems. It looks like, but you can imagine it going on in a family feud for 100 years and causing the whole countries to be at war. Kind of crazy, don't you think? Kind of sad too. Well, let's go back to these late Middle Ages and the year between 13 and 1400. It was called Dark Ages, but it wasn't so dark at first. In fact, there were a lot of really cool inventions, like the spinning wheel, they would spin cloth, like the windmill they used for water and farming, and the compass for navigation, horseshoes and stirrups and saddles for horses. The forests were cleared and you could look for miles and miles, and there'd be all these beautiful farms. There'd be the iron plow was invented for farming, and the methods of farming became much more advanced. They grew grain, wheat, barley, rye, oats, peas, beans, lentils, and the nitrogen from the beans helped the soil. Universities, education, artists, beautiful paintings were made during this time, and science flourished with Roger Bacon, one of the scientists. He was a priest. Dante and literature, architects and cathedrals. We went over beautiful cathedrals. But one of the really shocking things about the Middle Ages were the castles. They were very shocking beautiful. But they were there to protect against the warfare, against other people attacking their clans or their cities or their towns. And during this feudal system, everyone, when a war would happen, they would retreat into the castle. The castles were located in the hills, which were the best locations so they could see all around. They had moats, like little water dug all the way around them for protection, and then they pull up the drawbridge so nobody could get in. Huge iron gates. They would shut the iron gates so no one could come in. Winding staircases that wound in the opposite direction as they went up. So usually if you're left-handed sword fighter, it'd be better than a right-handed sword fighter. Right, Hudson?
Yeah.
He's going to be my sword fighter in a bit. And anyway, the lookouts, when they looked out, there would be like these small little slits to look through, but they could see from a great distance to see if, an army was coming. Thick walls and towers, and there was called the keep. And the keep were rooms where the owners lived. Great halls, beautiful tapestries. And the tapestries kept the halls warm because, castles were a very cold place most of the time because they were built of stone. It was a busy place, though. There were always carpenters and blacksmiths and cooks and workers, and they even had chapels for prayer. Can you believe that? But the thing about castles and fighting, they could go besieged. A siege is when the army would surround the castle and let no one in and no one out. And that was the way to conquer a town, to conquer a city, is by sieging it. Well, in these sieges, people knew about this. So in a castle, you would have to have plenty of food stored and plenty of water. And usually they needed at least one well. Because if you didn't have water for less than a week, you would not survive. So they really need water. And then the armies would come in with catapults, and they catapult all these cannons over, and all these even people. Sometimes even they catapult people over. That's kind of weird, but they did. Battering rams. And sometimes they would dig tunnels under the castle so they could get in more easily. And then there were the knights. the medieval knights, and they were dressed in all their armor. And you can look at the pictures. You know what a knight looks like. And these were thousands of foot soldiers, and they'd come in horseback. And the knight's armor usually weighed about 25 pounds, and the horses had armor on as well. Can you believe a horse be looking like a knight? Kind of crazy. And then we went over before, they had the code of chivalry, and they did tournaments. But the chivalry code was to protect the poor, to respect the church, to obey your superiors, and to defend women. Quite a deal. Well, let's go back to the 100-Year War, but let's take a break, okay?